tend to take the mail for granted. It's always there, rain or shine, and we've often ignored the various delivery vehicles unless they are in our way or we have to go around them. But have you ever wondered the history of the mail truck and how we got to today? Welcome back to All Cars, y'all. I am John, and this is the far too brief history of the mail truck. To get to today, we have to go back to the ancient world and the earliest uses of mail services, but we didn't use the word mail until the 1600s. The first documented use of a courier service to deliver written documents is in ancient Egypt about 2400 BC, when the pharaoh would send out decrees across the territory, and we still have a piece of mail from them dating back to 255 BC. In fact, the Egyptians were using homing pigeons to deliver messages on or around 3000 BC. The Persians developed one of the earliest postal systems, dated around 550 BC, but sources vary on that. This system used stations where the carrier would ride his horse to the next station and switch to a fresh horse at approximately 1 day's journey's distance. It was from this time period that Herodotus described that neither by snow nor rain nor heat nor darkness from accomplishing their appointed course. Does that sound familiar? Well, it was reused later on. Of course, China developed a mail service, and while dates vary, it's known that in the Han Dynasty around 200 BC, they had a system with stations about every 15 kilometers and with a system of couriers. By sometime after 600 AD, they had over 1,600 post houses with over 20,000 people reporting to the Ministry of War and where private correspondence was forbidden. Other developed nations created similar systems, such as India circa 322 BC, using the head of their intelligence service to deliver information via courier. And this brings up the fact that many of these early postal services not only delivered royal edicts, but were part of their espionage networks. The Mongol Empire was famous for its messenger system. Marco Polo commented on its efficiency, and it was used for official mail as well as for some others like military or foreign dignitaries. Of course, the Romans, with their vast road network, had a similar service called the cursus publicus, adopted from the Persian model and available only for the government or military and for personnel such as veterinarians. Modified many times over the centuries, it survived to the Eastern Roman Empire and well into the 6th century. In 1505, what is considered the first modern postal service in the world was established in the Holy Roman Empire, operated by the Thurn and Taxis family until broadly the 1800s. In many systems, the recipient was who paid for their post based on distance or number of sheets until 1840 in the UK, when the system was revised by Sir Rowland Hill based on stamps or pre-printed envelopes and a uniform penny post where a single rate of delivery was applied. By the 1800s, most mail was moved between towns by horse-drawn coach. Also in the UK, the first mail train ran in 1830, carrying post between Manchester and Liverpool. And the first money order system started in 1838. The idea of a specialized carriage quickly took hold, and in 1838 the first traveling post office was put in use, where the mail was loaded into the carriage and sorted while underway to its destination. Similarly, in the U.S., by 1862, converted baggage cars called railway post office cars were used sorting while moving in preparation to deliver to a westbound stagecoach from St. Joseph. Of special note is the famous Pony Express, placing stations between 5 and 25 miles apart where riders would exchange horses. For all its historic fame, the surprising fact is it only lasted for just 18 months between April of 1860 and October 1861, when it went bankrupt as the telegraph became available. Through the 1800s, collection and transport was primarily by handcart and horse-drawn wagons, and in rural areas, residents were required to go to town to pick up their mail or pay private delivery services to bring it out to them. By 1890, there was a push to expand delivery, and 1893 legislation was passed establishing the Rural Free Delivery Service. As motorized vehicles became more common, their use and experimentation by the mail service increased. The U.S. Mail experimented with motorcycles, three-wheeled motorcycles, trolleys, electric automobiles. By 1905, they began using gas-powered autos for collection, and also, by 1905, some of those RFD carriers were using automobiles, enabling them to do 8 hours of work in only about 2 hours, compared with using a horse and wagon. As in this 1910 photo, the RFD carriers were encouraged to use electric vehicles as well. But even with advancements, it was many years before motorized vehicles could improve on a horse and sled in snowy conditions. As the Model T became a success, many were converted for mail delivery and collection, including this famous one called the Snowbird, with dual wheels with tracks and front skis. Note the RFD Route 2 labeling on it. While most carriers switched to motorized delivery by the early 20th century, horses were still used into the 1970s in some areas. Between 1929 and 1932, the U.S. Postal Service ordered Ford Model A or Model AA chassis and outfitted them with mail van bodies. Of course, mail delivery by plane increased in the 20s, and by the early 40s, when railway use declined, the USPS introduced the highway post office bus, replacing the railway trains, combining transporting and sorting. By the 1950s, there was an explosion of postal vehicles, with the U.S. Mail ordering thousands of different versions to try out as part of their modernization plan, including this van, three-wheeled vehicles, and the famous Mail Jeep. The Mail Jeep was a two-wheel drive version of the CJ series and started production in 1955 by Willis, continuing through Kaiser Jeep and AMC. Versions improved over the decades as the civilian Jeep counterpart changed. The first generation was the 56 model DJ3A, using the body style of the older CJ3A and Willys' straight 4 L134 engine and a 3-speed manual, but with optional floor or column shifting, and one model having the driver's position on the right for mailbox delivery. In 1965, Kaiser Jeep replaced the DJ3A with the DJ5 based on the CJ5 and is a right-hand drive model and known as the Dispatcher 100. Engines were either a version of the Willys i4 or a version of the Buick 225 V6 known as the Dauntless. They were also offered in a long wheelbase version called the DJ6 up until 1973, but these weren't immediately accepted for use by the USPS. In 1968, the U.S. Postal Service held a competition to choose a new light delivery vehicle, evaluating the Ford Bronco, International Harvester Scout, and the DJ5. The Jeep entry was right-hand drive without power steering, lighter than the standard CJ5, partially by the use of C-channel frame rails, a lockable sliding metal door, and only the driver's seat. In 1967, Kaiser updated the DJ5 to the DJ5A with a Chevy inline-4 engine and a 2-speed automatic power glide. In 1970, Kaiser Jeep was purchased by American Motors, and the DJ5B debuted, now using the AMC straight 6 along with other improvements such as heavy-duty steering box and limited slip differential. In 1971, AMC spun the military and commercial products off into a subsidiary named AM General. Yes, that's the company that built the Hummer. There were mostly yearly updates to the DJ5 series, culminating in the DJ5M in 1984. By the end, more than 136,000 DJ5 vehicles had been produced. Of interesting note is that AMC had been experimenting with electric vehicles, and starting in 1974, they mass-produced the DJ5E. Powered by two 27-volt lead-acid batteries and a 30-horsepower motor, the USPS purchased 352 vehicles for cities such as LA and Washington, and with a range of 29 miles at 80% discharge. While the Postal Service raved about its success, no further units were purchased. With the end of the DJ5 line coming, the USPS provided specifications to companies and received 3 prototypes in 1985 to test. Grumman partnered with General Motors against Poveco and AMC. Each entry was subjected to 24,000 miles of testing, different surfaces, handling, economical operation, and the ability to work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. In the end, the Grumman Long Life vehicle won the $1.1 billion contract for over 99,000 LLVs with an option for 54,000 more. The chassis is based on the 1982 Chevy S10 Blazer and powered originally by the 2.5-liter Iron Duke 4-cylinder and later by GM's 2.2-liter 4 used in vehicles like the Corsica and Beretta, mated to GM's TH180 3-speed automatic. Final body and assembly was by Grumman. Famous for its turning radius, the LLV can often exceed 200,000 miles of stop-and-go driving before needing an overhaul. In 1998, the Postal Service solicited a bid from Ford and Utilimaster for an order of 10,000 carrier vehicles to replace some DJ5s, called the FFV. In 1992, the Energy Policy Act was passed requiring 75% of all federal fleet vehicles to be alternative fuel. After evaluating 12 prototypes, the first fleet vehicle completed in December 1999, and the final order exceeded 21,000 units. This FFV was based on a right-hand drive Ford Explorer chassis and sent to Utilimaster for body and finishing. With a 4-liter Ford V6 and a 5-speed automatic, it met the alt-fuel requirements by being able to use E85 blends, but at a penalty to fuel economy. At 17 feet long, it's 2 feet longer than the LLV, and while looking similar, it's easily distinguished by the street side window. USPS purchased their last LLV in 1994, surpassing 100,000 put into service. The expected lifespan of 24 years was stretched to 30 years in 2009, a testament to living up to their name. In 1995, 97, and 99, 10 LLVs were converted to a battery electric drivetrain by GM Hughes and U.S. Electric Car with lead-acid batteries. Deployed in California and Merrifield, Virginia, the project was canceled when GM ended their EV program. Later, a larger test with 500 ECRVs between 2000 and 2003 was tried, with a similar body by Grumman but built on a Ford Ranger EV chassis. With a 90-horsepower motor and a range of 50 miles, it met or exceeded its performance requirements, with most routes being between 13 and 16 miles. Once again, when Ford canceled their EV program, the experiment ended and the Postal Service just exchanged them for Windstars. By 2009, USPS was spending over $500 million a year on repair and retrofit of its fleet of LLVs, and with an estimate that it would cost over $4 billion to replace them all. In some areas, vehicles like the Dodge Grand Caravan were utilized to replace aging LLVs. In 2015, USPS sent out their solicitation for the next generation delivery vehicle, with an expected 180,000 unit order worth over $5 billion and expected delivery in 2018. They were requiring a minimum life of 12 years and a target of 20, 1,500-pound capacity, and many other requirements including HVAC, speed, grade, and price. 6 suppliers received prototype contracts. AM General, Carson, Mahindra, Oshkosh partnered with Ford, Utilimaster, and a joint venture between Workhorse and VT Hackney. In 2017, the prototypes were delivered and under testing into 2018. By the end of testing, the AM General and Oshkosh options were the leaders, as the other candidates required near constant towing from the test track for repairs. Testing dragged on, with USPS adding durability and other testing, and some candidates dropped out as testing extended into 2019. Utilimaster withdrew in 2017. AM General lost their powertrain supplier in the London Electric Vehicle Company. VT Hackney left, but then was bought out by Workhorse so they could continue into 2019. And in 2020, Mahindra withdrew, citing financial issues. Final reviews were completed in January 2021, and it was announced Oshkosh won a contract for up to 165,000 vehicles over 10 years, and USPS's first order for 50,000 was valued at $2.98 billion. After the announcement, Workhorse was sued to protest the award to Oshkosh, but dropped the suit. But other groups sued in 2022 to block the procurement, leading the Postal Service to increase the proportion of electric units they planned on purchasing. These new delivery vehicles will be rolling out for a long time, and while recording this, I've actually caught my mail carrier out here so I could take a look at his vehicle, because I never realized that since they look so similar, there was a difference between the Grumman LLV and that Ford FFV. My guy drives an old Grumman, as a matter of fact. And it's also fascinating to me that that long life vehicle, that literally they've lasted for more than 30 years now, or right at it, used an old Chevy S10 chassis and originally used the Iron Duke, an engine that was largely criticized while it was in production for the public for being kind of a dog. This was a fascinating one to me, and especially the history portion of where the mail service came from. I could have gone on about that for a long time or done a whole video about it, but I wanted to get to this. And this does leave out, I have to admit, a lot of other vehicles. The tractor trailers or the larger collection vehicles that pick up and then take back to the sorting center. I wanted to really focus on the delivery vehicles, the ones that you and I see out here every day at our mailbox. The ones that, like I said at the beginning, tend to be in the way, because those are the ones that we see and we hear and that we touch, the people we actually interact with. I'm excited to see this next generation of vehicle, and it's fascinating to me how much more specialized the mail vehicles have become. And it's almost come full circle. When the move to internal combustion engine or electric vehicles started, they would buy the chassis of, say, a Model T or Model AA, something like that, and then take it to a coach builder to custom build a body for the Postal Service. As things progressed, they tried different vehicles, but ultimately settled on a Jeep, which was basically just a Jeep with stuff inside to make it appropriate for the mail service. But now we've gone all the way to the other end, where dedicated, customized vehicles to meet the standards of the Postal Service itself. And I support the move to hybrid or electric vehicles, especially in highly urbanized city centers. And there is a story in here somewhere about those attempts to use electric ones, which all seem to get rave reviews but never went anywhere. Somebody needs to do investigation into that. Well, thanks for being here, and as always, thanks much to my Patreons for supporting this channel. Your support helps make this possible. And please, consider showing this channel some love if you love independent news and reviews and histories like this. Thanks for being here.